Okay, stand by.
Go out there so I can watch it.
You can watch it live here.
Yeah, this
We're-
is like,
we're
why would
here
you watch
live.
us on the screen when you watch
I
this?
know. That's why I came in, but I can't see the screen part.
Okay.
So, are we getting questions on the video screen? Or?
No, we'll get them the same way we got the last one.
Okay. Are those actually backwards for people?
I don't know. Here, we're now live. Hey,
Awesome.
guys. Oh, there's a delay, though.
That's right. Introduce yourself.
Oh, this is embarrassing. Okay, just don't do anything for a second. Okay, so we're trying to work through this delay, and forgive us, this is new technology for us. We're newspaper people, and there's a delay. So we're just going to wait for some questions to come in, and then we'll start answering them. Oh, how's it? First question. How has your life been since the award was announced?
So it's all you.
Okay,
you should tell them where you were when you found out about the award.
Yeah, so I was about to get on a plane, like, you know how you can't fly from here to anywhere without connecting somewhere you don't want to be? So I was in one of those airports, and I was about 10 minutes from getting on the plane, and essentially my wife texted me, and she said, "You won national reporting." And I was so excited that when I got on the plane, this is like a connector plane back to Colorado Springs, I had the flight attendant, I was like, "Hey, look, I just found out I won the Pulitzer Prize. Will you tell everybody on the plane?" And so since most of them were from Colorado Springs going home, that was a nice thing. But like, how has it changed? My life has not changed. Like, the next day I got back into work, and Joanna Bean's like, she's the managing editor. She's like, "So what have you done for me lately?" So,
same here. I shot what did I shoot this morning? I shot just a high school prep signing. So life's back to normal. There's a lot more cake in the office.
More cake.
Recently,
donuts.
But donuts came in this morning. But besides getting fat, I think it's been just riding a high for both of us. But doing our normal stuff.
Hey, we'll take it. Normal life with just like in the background, hey, a Pulitzer Prize is pretty sweet. So it says, "Congrats and fantastic series. What type of feedback have you been getting from the story's subjects? Do you still keep in touch with them? Do you have the texts?"
I do, yeah. Why don't you start talking about Paul?
I actually, one of the main people we focused on was this sergeant named Paul Sassy. And the first time we met him, he was in solitary confinement and really in a bad mental state and paranoid and even kind of difficult to understand. And I've talked to him regularly since then. After our reporting, he was medically retired by the Army. He was let out of jail, not because of our reporting, but during our reporting he was let out of jail. He now has full benefits. He called me recently because he just got a PTSD therapy dog, which he was like really excited about, and he just wanted to let me know, that things are going really well. So they're all doing really well. One of the other people we focused on was a soldier named Cash Alvaro. He also got VA benefits, which when we met him, he was basically homeless. He was sort of couch surfing with people here and there, but he had nothing. He had a backpack, and he got VA benefits. He got VA housing, and he got the GI Bill. So he's now, actually it wasn't GI Bill, but he got a scholarship to go to community college. So he's now taking classes.
And another one of the final soldier that we really focused in on was Jerry Jensen, the guy who had his face blown off. And I just have some texts from him here. I recently
got these the night of the award.
When we found out that we won, I told him, that we won, and thank you for being part of the series. And he told us that, I'll just read this verbatim: "Thank you, the Army is finally straightening everything out because of you in the professional manner you write." You saved You saved lives and gave men hope through a talent of communication and art. I did by killing. You are my heroes. So, I mean, it's been great to stay in touch with these guys. And
that kind of reminds me. So, like after the series ran, Jerry Jensen gave me this lighter, which is a lighter from his battalion. I carry with me all the time. Just as like a thank you, a token that we're now brothers, which means a lot to me. So they're doing good. They're doing good. We have another question here that says, have our legislators stepped up to the plate? That's kind of an interesting story that the short answer is to be continued. So when we ran these stories, Representative Mike Kaufman, who himself is deployed to Iraq, and Senator Bennett both proposed legislation. And it got through committee and it got into this giant bill called the National Defense Authorization Bill. And then because of the government shutdown and all this sort of partisan fighting in Congress last year, a lot of stuff got pushed and not approved until the very, very last minute. And so when the National Defense Authorization Bill got approved, that stuff got stripped out. And what those bills would have done is they would have essentially had hearings and a Government Accountability Office investigation that would look at these issues, and give the government and the legislators more information about what exactly is the problem and what are some potential fixes. So right now that hasn't been done. It got stripped out and it has never been put back in. So we'll see. They may let the ball drop, or they may pursue it and get something done.
So...
By the way, this is Michael Ciaglo. He's the intern.
I was an intern when I shot this story. Have since been hired on. Thank you, Dave.
Because he did such a good job.
But feel free. I mean, you can see that there's more people here than are typing questions.
Yeah,
but,
we're still waiting for a new question.
If you guys, anything, we'd be happy to answer it. But I mean, I'm just gonna ask Dave because I was thinking about this on the way over. What's one of the more interesting facts that actually didn't make it into the story? Do you have something that got cut just because one reason or another?
There was a couple things that I really wanted to include with each of these soldiers. We told this thing in 3 days with 3 soldiers, and it was important for me to do 2 things. One, I wanted to try and help the reader understand that traumatic brain injury is real, and that it has real effects that change how people act. And I wanted to make them understand that because I didn't understand that myself. And so I knew, okay, this is where we've got to start because that's what this is based on. And then the other thing that I wanted to include is even in towns like Colorado Springs, I think most people have no idea what guys who have deployed multiple times in combat units have been through. So with each of these guys, I wanted to make sure that people understood what that was like. That definitely added length, but I thought that was key. Our editors behind here laughing because the joke in the newsroom is that I couldn't write anything under 60 inches. In the newspaper, we measure things in column inches, how long a story is. And a normal news story is maybe 15 inches. And then maybe a Sunday story is maybe 30, 35 inches. And then a Dave Phillips story is probably 70 inches. And then this series was, how many inches, Joanna? She's rolling her eyes.
600?
She's doing the math now.
Couldn't guess.
She's got the abacus out.
It
was probably about 400 inches.
We do have a new question.
Way more than 400.
Has the Army and military been cooperative in recent months when asking for interviews for follow-up stories?
No. No, they haven't. Okay, so here's the thing about the Army and the military. They're huge. They're massive. And there are different people with different jobs and different beliefs. Now, officialdom in the Army, I think, would really just prefer that we go away. We don't do anything to help them. We cause them a lot of problems. I don't think that they believe our reporting. Now, at the same time, there are people on the ground in the Army that are in various walks of life, whether they're in the medical field or they're in the criminal justice and legal field that see this stuff going on, and they're very helpful to us. Now, sometimes they have to help us behind the scenes as unnamed people, but certainly without those people helping us, we couldn't do any of this. Okay, next one. Congrats, much deserved. I'm curious, what, if anything, didn't make the final version of the story? Any tidbits you didn't have room for? I don't know. Like I said, we wrote long photos.
We had to include a lot of photos, not in the actual paper, but we had to use a gallery online for that. We spent 7 months with these guys, so we had hundreds and thousands of photos that would have worked and would have been good, but unfortunately didn't make the final cut.
You know what? There were soldiers all over the place that didn't get included in this, or got included as a paragraph when they should have been a story. There was a guy that we talked to from Fort Bliss, Texas, who was being kicked out of the Army because he had missed too many doctor's appointments. And the reason he had missed those doctor's appointments was because he had been checked into a psychiatric hospital. I cannot even believe that. So, we treated that guy in this much text as just yet another piece of evidence that things are not as they probably should be. From start to finish, how long of a project was this?
Well, you talked about that yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead.
I started in December. And you start broad.
I
started in October, and you start broad, and then you don't even know what you have. And then you start to see patterns. You're like, oh, wait, this and this and this. I wasn't sure if this was a story about problems with the medical retirement system. I didn't know if this was a story about problems with soldiers not being able to get into the wounded warrior unit. And it took time. Now, once I started winnowing down to the soldiers that I knew I wanted to focus on, that's when I got the photographer involved, and I said, hey, we're going to come, we're going to visit these guys multiple times. But, I mean, one of the things I said to him is every time we meet one of these guys, you might never meet them again because they're in jail, or they're, have serious medical conditions, or they have PTSD and they may never speak to you again. So treat every time you see them as the last time. Fortunately, we got to see them all.
I'm just going to butt in real quick and go on a tangent, but that was some of the best advice I got from you, I think, during this was, treat every time you see someone as the last time you're going to see them. We just recently went and visited a different soldier for a different project, and we got there, and the guy had colon cancer, and I thought, I got to shoot this as if it's the last time I'm ever going to see him, and lo and behold, 3 days after we visited him, he ended up passing. Hopefully we get to tell that story and do it right, but it's one of those things one of those pieces of advice that really stuck with me. But to answer your question, all in all, from October until when it got published in May, 7 months, I believe is the...
Yeah, maybe more like 6, but a long time. We were working on other stuff during that time, but for a paper like this, that's a long time to have a story sitting there. And certainly it required a lot of patience from other people on the staff, because they may be turning a daily story or two a day, and then they're like, why is Dave Phillips over there going through all those papers? So next question
is, next comment from Bill is, what's your next big target?
I think that's for you.
That's for me. I don't know. I don't think that.
I dispute. So it's, what is your next big target? Target is really the wrong word. Maybe what's your next big project?
I like project too.
Okay, so I think sometimes when you get these stories, it's just like someone calls you up and gives you a big story, and then it's your job to then take that seed and nurture it. Other times it's reasonable to just look at something that is important and say, if I spend some time there, there'll likely be something. So what are the big things in Colorado Springs? That's the question you ask. Our industry is still overwhelmingly military. Could I occupy myself for several months just trying to write about NORAD in Cheyenne Mountain. Sure, that would be fascinating. What goes on there now? I have no idea. I'm not saying that that is our next one. I don't know if I want to say what we're working on right now, but that's sort of how we work. Look at something where there's likely to be something. And then sometimes, literally, you'll be working on something else and someone will call you and give you a giant story. And so you have to be ready for that too. So please.
If you have that giant story, give us a call.
Call us. The
next comment is, difficult to remove yourself from the soldiers and veterans. It must have become personal.
Yeah. Okay, so here's the trick. Is like, you have to, well, it's not a trick. Here's the problem. You have to be separated from these guys because you're not their friend. You may be doing something that ultimately in the long run benefits them, but that can't be part of your decision making. We are there as journalists to report the truth that is significant. And like to that end, we have to keep ourselves somewhat separate. Now here's where that got tricky. One of the guys that we reported on was severely ill. It was questionable. We had conversations where it's like, is he going to die before this is done? Because no one was helping him. And we couldn't help him.
Been to the emergency room 80 times in a year.
Yeah, he was having seizures all the time. He, was rail thin and just like, on top of having a severe case of PTSD.
I think you should talk about what you talked about with Joanna.
Yeah, so I talked with the editor about it, and we were like, where is the line with this guy? Because this guy needs help, and we are human beings. We're not just journalists. And she said that you can't help him. Like, you can't take him to the doctor if he needs a ride. You can't insert yourself into the story. And I remember like saying like that was ridiculous, like I'm not inserting myself into the story if the guy needs a little help. And so what we settled on, this is going to seem so cold, but this is absolutely how it went down, is like, if there is some imminent life-threatening thing such as someone needs to call 911 or someone needs to perform CPR, that's okay. And so, it sounds true, which happened.
You did have to do it.
Fortunately now, the good news is he's doing much better. Just a better environment, food, shelter, proper and reliable medication. He's a changed guy. Next question is, how many story drafts were there before the final product? Again, the editor is rolling her eyes. So we had this really great Colorado College intern named Andrea Tudhope, and she not only did she crunch some data for me, but she also read through like the first drafts of this.
When did you write the first draft?
Okay, I was writing the first drafts probably in mid-January, I would think. And it comes in pieces, and then you get in more information, and then you have to go back and change things. But really, like, it didn't change that much. A lot of times what you do is like you put too much on the paper and then you get to take things out. And maybe once you've taken enough out, you realize that this part that's up here actually belongs down here. So, but, in general, like, there were drafts, and then there's lawyer drafts that the lawyers have to read, and then there's, the draft that first there's the managing editor that reads it, then there's the editor that reads it, then the publisher that reads it, and
every time that one of those people read it, they send it back to the one person below.
And sometimes you're like, great change, and other times you're like, hell no, I'm not changing that. And so like it's this process, and it's surviving the process is really cool. Like when I first started in writing, I used to sort of fear that, like, oh, that means that I'm not turning in something that's perfect, and that's a problem with me. And like now I realize like that's the coolest part of all this stuff. I mean, or at least equally cool as getting to do the reporting, is like this process of like making something really bulletproof that'll stand up. Because really, like, here's the thing: the easiest thing for the reader to do is not read it. Like that requires no effort. So we have to make sure that every sentence is good enough that people are going to keep reading. So I appreciate the months that went into this.
I don't know if I've actually ever told you this, but
He's never read the story.
That's not true. I've read them all in full, which is saying something.
Yeah,
for
because
me.
photographers.
But when you first gave me the first drafts for me to read, I still have those hidden away somewhere.
Ooh,
Yeah.
cool.
I told someone when I was cleaning my room, told my girlfriend, if this doesn't win a Pulitzer, we can throw this away.
Good thing you didn't throw it away.
Good thing we didn't throw it away.
As a young journalist, can both of you share any advice about getting? Oh, the editor's rolling her eyes again. About getting in a newsroom and what I should be working on while in college. Dave, how did you learn how to be an investigative journalist? Cop shift, she says. Learn the cop shift. Okay, so quickly, like, I'm 36 years old, which means officially in the journalism world, I'm no longer young.
I don't know about that.
The line is 35. But, okay, so here's the best thing you can do in college, I think. Work for the college paper and try and get internships. Because the only thing that papers care about is that you can write things that are good and people want to read. And that's the best way to figure it out. It's just like practice, 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 practice. And it gets easier, and as it gets easier, you start doing bigger stuff. So how did I learn how to be an investigative journalist? I was hired as by the Gazette as like a ski writer. And I did that for like 5 years or so. And at the time, our newspaper was losing people because it was both the cultural shift of people, the internet eating all of our lunch, and then also we just had like terrible corporate mismanagement that where rich people wanted to take money out of the company, and so we had to lay a bunch of people off. So, but anyway, there was no one left to do big stories. We had no one here, and so in 2009 there was a big cluster of murders coming out of Fort Carson. And we were writing about the murders as you would write about any murder for daily news, but we weren't writing like the story, which is like what is going on and why. And so like no one was around to do it, and I just did it. And you learn by screwing things up and then figuring out, well, that didn't work. Let me try what else. And along the way, that learning curve is faster if you pay attention to what else is good writing out there. And then there's great professional organizations like investigative reporters and editors where every question you have, other journalists have had it, and you can go to them and look at, okay, I'm writing about healthcare. Where are some resources for documents, expertise? What if I run into this? But it's it's a process. Like I still don't consider myself an investigative journalist. I consider myself a ski writer who just happens to do something that needed to be done. But we're getting better.
And I mean, I think the other thing that I've always thought was important is if you do good work, good stuff will come to you. And so if you put yourself out there and you do good journalism, then you're going to get the better stories that may be turned into investigative things. I'm just going to jump in here real quick because I was in college.
Hi, Cassie.
2 years ago, and I'd just say definitely do the internships. Definitely do as many student publications as you can, and be dogged about it. When I came here, they didn't tell me that I was going to be working with Dave Phillips and doing this big project, but when I found out what he was doing, I knew that I wanted to be a part of it. And I told him that I wanted to be a part of it, and even though the managing editor, she told this story the other day about wait, the intern's going to be working on this with you?
She was pissed.
I mean, but she let it happen, and good things, great things came from it. So put yourself in a position, find the journalists who you admire in the newsroom and talk to them. Because everyone, I mean, if you're a journalist, you've got to have at least a little bit of ability to interact with people and be nice and everything like that. So they want to help you. So go to them, talk to them, do stories with them, and you'll boost your resume and get some great clips out of it too, and all that.
Okay, so the next message is from Cassie, who's another former intern of ours, and great. Were the soldiers scared that the project might further hurt their relationships with the military? Okay, so that was an issue with some soldiers, and we didn't get access to those soldiers. But these guys, the guy who is sitting in solitary without charge, we wrote about this guy. There's nothing else that the military can do to make his life worse. I mean, even if they decided to prosecute him, at least he'd be charged. And so for those guys, the only rope that could help them was us. The only one that didn't apply to was this guy, Gerald Jensen. Let me hold up. I hate to say this, but my favorite photo from the series is not Michael's. It's this photo that some soldier shot of Gerald Jensen. This is him in Afghanistan when he went back after being blown up and almost killed in Iraq. So Gerald Jensen, the first time I called him, he was about 2 or 3 weeks from getting out of the Army. And he said, hey, when I get out of the Army, I'll call you the very next day. And he did. But he wanted to wait because he didn't want to screw up anything with his medical discharge. But then once he was there, there's the headline here is left behind, because there's this military value that we will leave no comrade behind. And once he got out, he said, I'm not going to leave my comrades behind. You know, there are still guys that they're doing this to right now, and it disgusts me. And, you know, so I will help you. I will do whatever I can for you. So, but everybody has to have a reason to participate in a story. And I think if you can sort of step back and look at people's different motivations, that can be really helpful for how you interact with them. You know, and even people that don't want to participate with you, you can say, look, I'm doing this story about you. I know you don't like it. And if you hang up on me right now, it'll say no comment, and if that's what you want, fine. But help me understand how all this happened, you know, and whatever that is. And, you know, I'll put that in. I'm not here to, like, do anything sneaky. I just want to understand your perspective. And so sometimes that, you know, just being really forthright like that can work. Any regrets with the series? There's always stuff that you couldn't do. You know, we didn't get done everything we wanted to, but we tried as hard as we could, and yeah, I mean, I'm happy with what we got done. You know, I think what we got done is amazing, and it's great. There's other things we just couldn't get to.
And time was always a big thing too. I mean, in addition to working on this story, Dave was very blessed in the fact that he got time to do this pretty much full time. But I was still the intern and expected to, you know, go shoot sports and go shoot, you know, news assignments. So I mean, I wish I could have spent more time with these guys. But you know, I'm pretty happy with how it all turned out.
Next question. Do you think that publishing this feature in a military town gave you an advantage with the Pulitzer Committee? The Pulitzer Committee is a black box. Who knows how they work? You know, I will say, though, that all the military reporting that I've done, and you can boil it down to all I do is write bad stuff about the military. I've done it about the Air Force. I've done it about the Army multiple times. I always do it, I think, in a constructive way. But we always get really, really great feedback from military families and readers in town. Retirees, active duty, family, they appreciate it because these guys, I mean, a lot of them know what's going on or might have an inkling about what's going on. And then to see it laid out and be like, oh, I get it. That's why everyone I know is getting chaptered down. I think they appreciate. Or to know that they're not alone or something like that. So, I don't know, Pulitzer, it wasn't even in our mind about, what could we do to win the Pulitzer Prize? But you know, did we think about, how will this be received in Colorado Springs? Yes, but we knew that if we were right, if we were accurate, that the military community here would have our back.
And, you know, I guess one good thing about being in a military community is we have, you know, our representatives in Congress and the Senate know what we're about. Not that, you know, a senator or a congressman from another district wouldn't have as much weight from the military, but it certainly helps when the people they represent are being affected by this, and then we write about it, and they can introduce legislation that
their
helps
position.
everyone.
They're already on those committees.
Yeah.
Question: did the lawyers make you take anything out? Joanna, do you remember? There might have been like some word changing,
Or where we were.
but like any
it was
big facts or
suggested that
anything.
We check our facts, make sure
Yeah.
we're.
We have this really great lawyer up in Denver named Steve Zansberg, who's like the lawyer for all the papers in the state, and he's just great. He's very careful, so he'll just point out things out to you and be like, "Are you sure about that one? Because if you're not, you could get in big trouble." We went through a similar process with a story we wrote on the informant program amongst cadets at the Air Force. And you know, he'd be like, "You really have a document that says this?" And we'd be like, "Yep." And he's like, "Okay, then you're good." You know, things like that. So that's more his process. But in terms of like taking out whole facts or anecdotes or anything like that, by the time it gets there, we're not going to put anything in there that we can't back up. But it's kind of nice to have him as a last pair of eyes, because we've been living with the story for months and read it hundreds of times. And then to have him come in, sometimes the advice he gives you is not lawyer advice. It's like, well, this guy here, like, I didn't really understand this. And, you know, since he's a smart dude, he points out good things. So we are at about time. You want to take one more question?
Get in your last good one.
Okay. I think we're going
Talk
to
about small papers.
talk about small papers. Oh, yeah. So we won a Pulitzer Prize even though we had no business to. Because the people that didn't win were, I mean, there was phenomenal writing. Not just phenomenal writing in all the newspapers that are supposed to do phenomenal writing, but there was phenomenal writing in the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. There was phenomenal writing from a lot of the nonprofit investigative folks. So we were in there, and we made it. The cool thing about that is, like, we're at a small paper, and we didn't have all the tools those people had, but we had the tools that we needed to tell the story. You know, we couldn't go to Afghanistan, but were we able to talk to a bunch of people that had been with him by phone and get video from them and photos from them and stuff like that? Yeah. So we kind of had to do it on the cheap, but we did it, and I thought the story was. I thought it was great. I thought it was absolutely the best thing I could do. So I'm happy that the Pulitzer guys agreed. Should we cut it? Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you, guys. Really appreciate it.